Okay, so learning styles. This is pretty important um, because not everybody is the same, and everybody learns differently. And so, understanding the differences in between students' learning styles can really help us make a lot of progress with students. Um, if you don't know your learning style, there's a link in this section to take a quiz. You really should know what your learning style is, because when you have a student that has the same learning style as you, you may think he's a genius. And then you may have a student that has a completely different learning style, and you may think that there's something wrong with that student. And the truth is, um, if that's the case, you're not doing your job getting to know your students as well. So, understanding learning styles is really helpful. Um, the learning style refers to the preferential way in which the student absorbs, processes, and comprehends and retains information. Some students are going to need verbal instruction. Others are going to have to physically play it until they play the beat accurately. And some people are visual. They need to see it on the screen. Uh, so there's different styles. So here's what here's what we're talking about. So we got the classic three: the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. Um, it's pretty obvious. Visual learners learn by watching and monkey see, monkey do. Auditory learners, they have to understand it. Like, a visual learner may have a hard time understanding what you're saying until they see you do it, but an auditory learner needs you to break it down for them so they can understand it. And then there's the kinesthetic learner. They're not going to learn visually or auditory. They need to get their hands on the concept, so they're not going to understand it until they try it and work their way through it. So we're going to introduce a fourth one that I think is pretty interesting, and this is popping up more, is a reading writing learner, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But uh, the read and write, these guys, they learn best through words, and a lot of people, they don't realize that they're read and write because it hasn't been like an option, but they're the ones that need to write things down. They need to write things down. They like to read it. They can translate abstract concepts into words and essays. So a kid that's a read and write, or even adult, having them write something on a dry erase board is like amazing for them to do that. So if you're playing a beat and you're teaching them how to transcribe a beat or how to transcribe notes, having them write that down will make a big difference. When a visual learner can just watch that read and write student write things down, and they can learn it that way. Your visual learner is gonna using video really helps. So we have TVs in the classrooms, any images, any type of diagrams, drawings. That's really helpful. We use Guitar Pro, so using Guitar Pro is really good for the visual learner, but it's also good for the auditory learner because it plays the audio back to them. Your auditory learner, they need to listen, and they also need to speak and talk about it. Discussions are good for them. And of course, they need to just repeat things over and over again, especially younger students. They need to hear it over and over again. The auditory learners will use like mnemonic tools. So when you're like teaching a vocal student the notes on the treble clef, every good boy does fine, or face, or things like that, those are really, really helpful for them. Or Easter Bunny gets donuts after Easter is good for memorizing the strings on the guitar. So any mnemonic tools like that. Your kinesthetic learners, those other methods don't work really well for them generally. Um, they need to touch it. They need the tactile representation. Um, you're going to need a lot of hand sanitizer for these kids and adults, because you're going to need to, take their hands and move their fingers to put their fingers in their hands in the right place when they're playing an instrument, or our drummers, sometimes you need to stand behind them and just tap them on the shoulder to help them find the beat. So being able to identify all four of those learning styles and being able to teach to those four learning styles are very important. So you do want to think about some different ways that you can identify and serve students with those learning styles.